After Alice's parents went bankrupt, they chose to abandon her and commit suicide. Luis took Alice in, but not out of kindness. His actions were driven by a desire for revenge against Alice's family. It turns out that Alice's parents had stolen the heart donor meant for Luis's mother to save their own child, leading to his mother's death. Consequently, Luis harbored deep resentment against Alice's family, and now he had become Alice's creditor. Alice was grateful for Luis's help, but she could never understand his inconsistent attitude towards her. What she didn't know was that Luis had kept her around because he coveted her heart. Luis had been suffering from a heart condition for years, and he was waiting for the perfect moment to make Alice give her heart to him. Luis hadn't acted on his plan yet because over the years, he had developed a sense of pity for Alice. However, he couldn't bring himself to accept the betrayal of his mother. One day, Alice was punished by being made to kneel in the ancestral hall. Luis tossed her a loaf of bread, ensuring she wouldn't starve there. Alice, with her injured knees, returned to school, where she was targeted by bullying due to her stunning beauty. Her best friend, Kora, always protected her, and their childhood friend, Jason, would step in to help when the bullying escalated. Kora had secretly harbored feelings for Jason for years, but Jason's attention was always on Alice. One night, Alice went to the school dance alone. The bullies mocked her for having no partner and even spread rumors that she was being kept by an old man. Just as Alice thought Luis wouldn't show up, he appeared, wearing a mask, and danced with her. At the dance, Luis's true identity was revealed, and the bullies were terrified. They knew the man before them was incredibly powerful. Despite their pleas, Luis didn't spare them. Alice, still curious, remembered how Luis had once rejected her invitation, coldly telling her not to get the wrong idea before leaving without a second thought. On her way home alone, Alice was accosted by some thugs. In a critical moment, Jason arrived just in time to save her, then gallantly escorted her home. Luis happened to witness this scene, and his possessiveness was instantly triggered. Furious, he watched them from a distance. When Alice returned home, she tried on the dress Jason had gifted her. Soon after, the servant knocked on her door, informing her that Luis was unwell and needed her to take care of him. Whenever Luis's heart acted up, he required Alice's embrace to soothe him, and this time was no different. Luis gently wiped Alice's hair and then asked bluntly, "Who was the man who brought you home earlier?" Alice explained that he was her childhood friend, recently returned from abroad. Luis noticed the dress she wore was a gift from him, and his expression immediately darkened. With a burst of anger, he tore the dress off her. Without a word, he pushed Alice onto the bed. Alice woke up covered in kiss marks. She asked Luis what their relationship was now. Luis sneered coldly, "We are creditor and debtor." He added, with ice in his voice, that last night's entanglement was simply part of her debt repayment. Jason was planning to confess his feelings to Alice. He entrusted a ring to Kora for safekeeping, which led to a misunderstanding on her part. She thought that after all these years of silent devotion, Jason had finally noticed her. However, the reality hit her hard when Jason, full of excitement, bypassed her and proposed directly to Alice. At that moment, Luis arrived at the scene and intervened, refusing Jason's proposal on Alice's behalf. He assertively declared his claim over Alice in front of everyone, kissing her to seal it. Luis, seeing Jason's defiance, tore Alice's scarf off, revealing the kiss marks all over her neck, ensuring everyone saw them. He paid no attention to Jason's fate, ordering his men to take him away before tossing Alice onto the bed. Alice could only face Luis's fury helplessly, though she feared him. After Luis interrogated Jason fiercely, he learned that Jason hadn't slept with Alice. Relieved, he spared Jason's life. However, the young maid took advantage of Luis's absence to torment Alice. By the time Luis found Alice, she was barely conscious. Enraged, Luis ordered that the maid be sold to Myanmar. Alice fell into a fevered coma, prompting Luis to immerse himself in ice-cold water. He then climbed into Alice's bed, embracing her with his chilled body, trying to bring her temperature down. After a night, her condition stabilized. It was then that Luis overheard Alice mumbling Jason's name, which infuriated him. He stormed out of the room, leaving Alice unaware of his night-long care for her. Feeling the absence of concern from Luis, Alice bitterly thought that he would never care for her. It was her birthday, and she didn't expect any celebration. Soon after, Luis returned with a cake, but he was accompanied by another woman. When Luis introduced Alice to Bess, he only referred to her as a servant. The arrogant Bess, jealous of Alice's beauty, deliberately threw the cake on the floor. Luis sneered and mocked Alice. "Hurry up and eat it. This is your mistress's gift." Alice endured the humiliation and silently ate the cake. Afterward, Luis took Bess to his room, while Alice hid outside, witnessing their intimate moments. Luis told Bess, "She's just a vessel for my heart." Alice's heart shattered, and she made a firm decision. She would return her heart to Luis. Luis refused to allow Alice to die so easily. He ordered the doctors to treat her, or else everyone would pay the price for her death. Fortunately, Alice survived. In her delirium, she murmured, "Please, please, let me go." But Luis coldly refused, his sanity on the brink of collapse. He could not bear to let Alice escape his control. Meanwhile, Bess discovered the ambiguous relationship between Luis and Alice. She would not allow anyone to steal Luis from her. He was her fiancé. On the other side, Jason uncovered the truth about Alice's parents' death and suspected that Luis was involved. He told Kora everything. Jason naively believed that he and Kora could rescue Alice, unaware that Kora was no longer the same girl. She had loved Jason for a long time, but Jason's heart belonged only to Alice. Kora knew that if they got involved with Alice again, they would face Luis's wrath. Thus, she pretended to agree with Jason, but secretly formed an alliance with Bess. Kora arranged a meeting with Alice, telling her that Luis was responsible for her parents' deaths. In that moment, Alice's world crumbled. The loss of her parents and the torment she had endured were all tied to Luis. However, Alice was unaware that her so-called best friend, Kora, had malicious intentions and was planning to sell her out to other men. Kora gave Alice a drink laced with a sleeping drug, and when Alice awoke, she found herself in a dangerous situation. She struggled desperately, but fortunately, Luis noticed her absence and arrived just in time to rescue her. Luis brought Alice back home. With a seductive gaze, he asked, "Do you know who the person in front of you is?" Alice replied, "Luis," which pleased him, and they sang and withholding worked. Luis couldn't shake the memory of their brief, tender encounter, and it left him restless. That night, Luis, unusually soft and vulnerable, stopped Alice and joined her in bed. As they lay together, he thought to himself, if Alice could always be this obedient, maybe he could try to let go of his hatred. Luis had indeed fallen into Alice's trap, caught in the illusion of her fabricated tenderness. One day, he returned home with a bouquet, only to be met by Alice's knife. Luis had known all along that Alice's gentleness was a facade, yet he couldn't help but fall for it. What he hadn't expected was how quickly she would tear away that disguise. Despite everything, Luis didn't call the police. Instead, he simply took some medication and locked Alice in the basement. When Alice refused to eat, he ordered for her to be fed through and for. During the struggle, Alice slipped into unconsciousness. When Luis found out that Alice was pregnant, he immediately demanded that the hospital ensure both the mother and child were safe. Bess overheard this and, enraged, stormed into the hospital room to inform Alice of her pregnancy. She said, "Luis has decided you will keep the child, but the mother will be me." Alice, enraged, believed Bess's words. She refused to let anyone take her child away. Luis entered the hospital room with a prenuptial agreement in hand. Alice screamed in fury, swearing she would never marry the man who killed her father, nor would she sacrifice her child for him and Bess. Luis, perplexed, was about to explain himself when Alice picked up a knife, threatening her life as leverage. With no other option, Luis reluctantly left. The prenuptial agreement had been carefully drafted by Luis himself, intended to compensate Alice and their child. But by now, Alice no longer trusted him. In desperation, Alice turned to Jason for help, unable to endure staying with the monster that was Luis. Jason agreed to assist her, and Alice soon went into hiding. Luis, unable to find her, spiraled into madness. To force her back, he kidnapped both Kora and Jason. As expected, Alice appeared, begging Louise to release her friends. However, the cold-hearted Louise gave Alice only one choice. She could save one person. Alice knew, no matter whom she chose, Jason would die. In the end, she chose Kora. Louise ordered Jason's life to be taken, and Alice had no choice but to watch as her friend was brutally executed. Louise stood before his mother's grave, silently pleading for her forgiveness. In the end, he had married the child of his enemy. At the memorial service, Alice appeared, and Kora glared at her with venomous hatred. If it weren't for Louise being around Alice, Kora would have gladly torn her apart. Kora swore that the next time they met, they would be sworn enemies forever. Meanwhile, Bess, enraged upon learning that Louise had married Alice, deliberately set fire to her house, injuring herself in the process so she could stay at Louise's home. When Alice woke up, she found Louise gently tending to Bess's wounds. This sight reminded Alice of how disgusted she had once been when Louise touched her own blood. Feeling sickened by the couple, Alice lashed out, only to be swiftly punished by Louise. For the sake of her unborn child, Alice endured Bess's taunts and Louise's unpredictable mood swings. Bess ordered her people to dig up Alice's parents' ashes. To reclaim her family's remains, Alice went to Louise's ancestral hall, where Bess arrogantly threw the ashes on the floor. Alice attempted to fight back but was shoved down by Bess. In that moment, Alice wanted nothing more than to kill Bess, but Bess was a master manipulator. Upon seeing Louise arrive, she quickly pretended to be frightened and accused Alice of wanting to hold a memorial for her mother in Louise's ancestral hall. Louise's rage exploded. He grabbed Alice by the throat, his voice cold and filled with fury. "Do you know what your parents did? They killed my mother." Alice was forced to kneel in the ancestral hall as punishment. A kind-hearted maid revealed the truth to Alice. She learned that the heart Alice had been living with was originally chosen by Louise's mother for herself, but Alice's domineering parents had forcibly taken it and used it for Alice. The kind old woman had chosen forgiveness, not holding a grudge against them. However, Louise had harbored resentment ever since, constantly targeting Alice's family business. Alice's bankruptcy, however, was not caused by Louise, but by her parents' decision to produce low-quality food, leading to multiple deaths. This had nothing to do with Louise. Overcome with guilt upon hearing the truth, Alice was reeling from the revelation. Just then, Bess, in a fit of rage, grabbed a frozen fish and smashed it into the maid's head, killing her instantly. The immense shock caused Alice to faint. Bess handed Alice over to Kora, leaving her fate in her hands. As Alice begged for Kora's forgiveness, she suddenly felt a sharp movement in her belly. The baby was coming. Kora, moved by their old bond, reluctantly assisted her in giving birth. Despite her earlier bitterness, Kora's old affection for Alice won out, and she secretly hid the child. However, as soon as the birth was over, Bess appeared at the abandoned building. This wicked woman had decided to sell Alice overseas. Alice was sold to an underground hospital where she had already been drained of much of her blood, but she refused to give in. When the staff let their guard down, she seized the opportunity to fight back and escape. However, her attempt ended in failure, and she was met with even harsher retaliation. Meanwhile, Louise found Kora and threatened her to reveal Alice's whereabouts. Upon learning that Jason was alive and had been sent overseas for treatment, Kora finally let go of her previous hostility. She disclosed to Louise that Alice had been sold to overseas buyers by Bess, and that Bess was responsible for the maid's death. Alice was sold to the very couple who had once bullied her. They recognized her instantly and panicked, called Louise. Finally, Louise managed to rescue Alice and bring her home. After receiving medical treatment, Alice regained her ability to speak. Louise then took Alice to an abandoned building and handed her the power to judge Bess. Alice decided to make Bess truly experience all the pain and suffering that she herself had endured. As Alice and Louise began to heal the wounds of the past, they chose to leave their grievances behind. Louise solemnly proposed to Alice, offering her a special gift. Jason was still alive. In the end, Jason and Kora also found happiness together.